I'm Billy S, welcome back to the channel. Today we're hitting the handhelds as I talk about the bosses of the Legend of Zelda Phantom Hourglass. This entry in the series is divisive for its repetitive gameplay loop surrounding the Temple of the Ocean King, the controls, and how some people dislike this game's more rigid sailing structure compared to that of Wind Waker. But one area that Phantom Hourglass genuinely impressed me in were the bosses. All of them take advantage of the Nintendo DS's dual screen technology in ways that I think are really smart. Yes, it means that every boss has a gimmick, but in what could be considered one of the gimmickiest Zelda games, I'm okay with that. I just got off of playing Twilight Princess, so having an easier ride with Phantom Hourglass is a welcome change. I played this title on the Wii U Virtual Console, so that's why the screens are in this specific format. So be sure to parry that subscribe button if you want to stay up to date on all my future videos, and let's jump right in. All 10 bosses in the Legend of Zelda Phantom Hourglass, ranked. Let me know your lists down below. At number 10, we have the Ghost Ship, the second phase of the final boss of the game. After being saved from the depths of the Temple of the Ocean King by Oceus, Tetra is kidnapped by Bellum once more and taken to the Ghost Ship. So you, Ciela, and Linebeck must chase down the vessel to save your friend. The boss fight consists of you using your ship's cannon to fire at the various Bellum eyes that are formed around the ship. The goal is to destroy every last one of them, but the issue is that they eventually regenerate, so you have to act fast and check the minimap to figure out where each eye is placed. The ghost ship can fire energy orbs at the player, which you also need to be aware of and destroy as you go, as they can give you healing for your ship and stop you from getting damaged yourself. It's a simple, cinematic fight, and as long as you're accurate with your shots, you will very easily whittle down the eyes until just one remains, and one well-placed final shot will end the fight. I don't mind marine combat in Phantom Hourglass, but that doesn't mean I prefer it to the actual traditional boss fights we encounter in the game, though I do appreciate story-wise that we get the opportunity to properly take down the ghost ship after all it put us through on our journey. Speaking of the ghost ship, actually. At number 9, we have the diabolical Cubus sisters, the bosses of the ghost ship. I'm so tired of Dead Man's Volley, you guys. Playing through this series chronologically, I've come to realize that with every new bit of energy tennis I get to play, I'm enjoying the gimmick less and less. The idea that they're firing orbs from the top screen and you have to move around the bottom screen and position yourself correctly is interesting enough. The way they bounce the orbs between each other when you hit it back is also a nice twist, as it keeps you guessing as to when the attack will get spiked back at you. Now, the first orb you hit back immediately damages the first sister, while the other 3 are shooting slow laser beams to limit your movement of area. It's not until the first sister goes down that they actually start to bat the energy back your way and the fight truly begins. The main issue I have with the sisters is that I just don't find this fight fun. It gives the illusion of progression, but I'd argue once there are 2 sisters left, and dare I say even 1 sister left, the fight becomes painfully easy to manage. Sure, when it's just the purple one, she fires 3 attacks per volley, but it's not hard to just run to the correct orb and hit it back while avoiding the 2 false ones. And then it's pure energy tennis, no gimmicks, no nada, it's not for me. I much prefer them in their NPC forms in the dungeon itself, but that'll have to wait for another video. At number 8, we have Blaz, Master of Fire, the boss of the Temple of Fire. The first fight in the game, while you have just 3 hearts to your name, Blaz makes use of the Nintendo DS in a way that is a little obscure if I'm being honest. He splits into 3 smaller clones which will each attempt to fireball you while floating around the room. In order to damage the boss, you need to have him reform into his regular state, but the only way to do that is to boomerang the clones and smush them together, which sounds simple enough, but it's not going to work the first time or the second time, because there's a rather subtle gimmick here. The 3 clones appear on the game's minimap, and if you look closely, you'll notice that each of the 3 icons have a different number of horns, so you have to boomerang them in ascending order, hitting the 1 horn, then the 2 horn, and lastly the 3 horn. I can't even be mad, that's a really smart gimmick. But it's also the only thing this boss has going for him, as once you reform the guy, he's vulnerable to attacks. He can teleport around and use fire to hurt Link, but it's easy to avoid. I'll admit, I had to look this up on my recent playthrough because I couldn't remember the gimmick for the life of me. Yet somehow, child me understood this perfectly. What was young Billy on? I'd love to know. At number 7, we have Cyclock, Stirrer of Winds, the boss of the Temple of Wind. Arriving in the boss arena, we find ourselves at the peak of the island where Cyclock sails down on a vast tornado. In this dungeon, we found the bombs, which are vital towards taking down our opponent. Cyclock will fly around the skies using the top screen, while on the bottom screen, Link can see the arena and dodge attacks. Cyclock can do a dash by swooping down to try and hit the player, or he can fire tornadoes that attempt to land on top of Link. The way to win the fight involves you keeping an eye on Cyclock's location, either by following him on the top screen or by watching his shadow on the bottom screen. You then have to chuck a bomb into one of the 3 tornadoes summoned on the blue symbols, which will send it flying through the vortex upwards onto the second screen, where if Cyclock is in the way, it'll stun the boss. This allows you to attack him, rinse and repeat until the boss is down. I like this fight a lot because it utilizes both screens and actually has a small element of skill with timing your bomb throws to hit the boss. You're not going to die to a Cyclock, but you're not going to die to a majority of these bosses, let's be real. At number 6, we have Gleeok, Two-Headed Dragon, the boss of the Temple of Ice. We've seen Gleeok a couple of times in Zelda now, the original game, Oracle of Seasons, Tears of the Kingdom, and I think a lot of people forget that he was brought back for Phantom Hourglass. This is the classic fire and ice boss, with one head shooting fire, the other shooting ice. Your aim is to reflect each attack into the opposing head, so fireballs into the ice head and vice versa, which you do by using your grappling hook on the various wooden pegs in the arena. Technically, this is energy tennis, but I appreciate that they decided to use an entirely different item, and you have to actually think about which pegs you're attaching your grappling hook to in order to get the angle you need to hit the correct target. There's thought, and that's the main thing. I like, as well, how the Gleeok can flood the room with water and ice, forcing you to hop onto a wooden peg to avoid the water attack, followed by you needing to attack icebergs that float towards you. Once you break both the masks that the bosses wear, they'll begin using charged attacks where, if you hook their tongue to one of the wooden pegs, it'll cause them to slam to the floor and become stunned. Rinse and repeat until the boss is down. This is a big step up compared to our previous fights, a lot of thought went into the Gleeok encounter, but I do feel it's a little bit lengthy compared to other fights in the game. The room flooding attack can often last for a while, and always happens after a cycle with the bosses, which lends a small amount of tedium to the fight. Not enough to bother me terribly, but just enough to where my next entry was able to squeak into my top 5. At number 5, we have Crack, Bane of Courage, the boss of the Temple of Courage. When I think about the bosses of Phantom Hourglass, Crack is actually the first fight that comes to my mind, because I thought his gimmick was really unique when I was a kid, and it led me to holding this fight deep in my heart. The bottom screen is the usual gameplay, but the top screen is replaced with Crack's own viewpoint. Because the boss turns invisible at the start of the battle, the only way to determine his location is to look at the top screen and see what Crack is looking at and maneuver that way. You need to shoot him with your new bow and arrows, so you have to wait for the boss to line up looking at Link, and then fire an arrow in the correct direction to stun him, causing him to retreat into his shell. From here, you need to hit the purple orbs protruding from the boss, which I did with my sword, but honestly I should have used arrows, as there's a purple smog that can damage you if you get too close. But hey, I just saw glowing weak points and my Unga Bunga brain activated. Rinse and repeat this whole process until the shell finally breaks. But Crack is dangerous. If he gets close enough to you, he'll grab you with his pincers, and he can also summon cracklings to harass you during the fight. The last portion of the battle sees you attacking the boss to make him defend himself, thus allowing Link time to run around and hack at his bright blue tail. Do this enough times and Crack falls. Of the early game bosses, Crack has the most depth to him and actually felt like a genuine threat to me, on top of having a really cool gimmick. I think he deserves his spot in the top half of this list. At number 4, we have Bellum, Evil Phantom, fought in the depths of the Temple of the Ocean King. Bellum is the main antagonist of Phantom Hourglass, a squid-like tentacle creature who steals the life force of strong individuals so that he may continue to exist. His first fight is the longest, and also the most detailed. It starts with Bellum in his pool, where you have to grappling hook a series of purple clouds so that you can eventually grapple Bellum's shell. This pulls him towards you and stuns him, allowing you to hit his gigantic eye. All the while, he's firing annoyingly accurate pot shots at you that definitely had my number. He'll then rise up from the pool to the next floor, where he'll attach his tentacles to the various pillars, and you have to run around the circular arena, firing arrows at the eyes on his tentacles when they open. Do this until all the tentacles are gone and he falls back down, repeating this initial part of the fight until you progress. He'll keep rising higher and higher until you reach the top level of the arena, using his tentacles to smack Link if he stays too still. But midway through the fight, things get interesting. Bellum releases an energy that returns to Ciela the Fairy, revealing to her that she isn't just the spirit of courage, but the spirit of time. Now you have the ability to stop time as long as Ciela gives you a Phantom Sphere, which you need to use this power in order to hit Bellum while he's dashing around the lower portion of the boss arena, and do enough damage here and the fight concludes. I like the little reveal of Ciela's new power. It is a bit Deus Ex Machina, and there's no reason why she should have a secondary power when the other spirits don't, but she's cool, and it's a fun little gimmick that makes a lengthy fight a little bit more memorable. I think Bellum is really well designed, maybe not the best paced with how long it can be running up and down those stairs and knocking out purple globs as you're trying to line up shots on those tentacle eyes, but it's the final boss. Where else are you gonna go all out in this game? At number 3, we have Eox, Ancient Stone Soldier, the boss of Muto's Temple. A creature that towers over Link to the point of needing 2 screens to show his entire size, this is a fight that ends up being very simple conceptually, but it's just so much fun. Eox has a vast amount of red buttons on his body, each of which can be struck with your newly found hammer to do damage. You have to avoid Eox's attacks like his slams, while catapulting yourself into the air with the catapults provided, so you can reach Eox's weak spots and tap them with the stylus, damaging them with the hammer. You get to destroy this creature piece by piece, shattering each weak spot and feeling really good about it as you go. There's no guessing as to how far along in the fight you are, because you can see the visual indicator of the boss's actual physical state. You're always aware of how much more you need to do to end phase 1. Once the body breaks, you then have to dodge arrows shot out by the head while luring Eox to a catapult so you can launch yourself on top of him to hit his main weak spot and ultimately finish him off. I actually have a funny story about this. One of my mum's friends back in 2007, when the game came out, visited our family in Spain. She let me play the game, telling me I could do what I wanted, just don't go into Muto's temple. So naturally I went into Muto's temple, completed the dungeon, and beat the boss, much to her annoyance. I was like 9 or 10, what were they expecting? But that made it one of the first Zelda bosses I remember killing for the first time, as I didn't grow up with the Zelda series. We didn't have an N64 or a GameCube, we were a PlayStation household up until the Wii. So Eox might actually be one of the first Zelda bosses I ever beat outside of the NES and Link's Awakening titles. So yeah, fun story. Don't trust me with your video games. At number 2, we have Dongorongo, Armored Lizard, boss of the Goron Temple. I really like this fight because it has really good pacing and made great use of the dungeon's 2 gimmicks. The first is the Bomb Chew, which is arguably at its best in the franchise here on a handheld. Being able to physically draw the path a Bomb Chew can take is game-changing. Aside from this, you also have Gongaron, the child of the Goron Elder, who you controlled for a short while during the temple. Here you need to switch between him and Link, as we're currently trapped on the other side of the boss arena. Gongaron has to avoid Dongarongo's fireball attacks until he does a charge. When the boss hits the wall, he stuns himself, allowing the Goron to use his rolling attacks to knock the Dongarongo onto his side. From there, we switch back to Link and draw a Bomb Chew right into his mouth. It's really satisfying to finally see an item that has had barely any use in the series up to this point have a focal moment in a proper boss fight. And switching between the two characters is pretty novel. You have to sometimes swap to Link as well to kill smaller enemies that crawl towards him. Defeating the boss, you can cross into the main part of the arena, only as Gongaron leaves, Dongarongo reawakens, and now you have to fight him like a classic Dodongo, throwing bombs into his mouth when he inhales and attacking him when stunned. The second phase felt more like a throwback than anything, but a welcome surprise for a fight that I already thought was really well designed. Getting an extra tussle with Dongarongo was something I enjoyed as the player. I actually have another tiny personal story. When I was in school, we would do creative writing, and I recall doing a story where I named my villain Dongarongo. I don't remember the details, but I remember thinking, is my English teacher going to Google that name? Not even thinking the more obvious thought of, is my teacher going to think I'm weird for calling a character Dongarongo? Being young was a different time, man. At number 1, we have Bellembeck, the final boss of Phantom Hourglass. Linebeck is a fan favorite. He is one of the shining examples of Phantom Hourglass at its best. He's a selfish sea captain who just wants a load of treasure and doesn't really give a damn about Link or Tetra. But as the game progresses, he begins to show signs of change, ultimately leading to that lovely scene outside the Temple of the Ocean King right before the Bellum fight. By the time we've chased down the ghost ship, he is fully on board with our cause, going so far as to strike Bellum down himself with a sword. However, the boss latches onto Linebeck, transforming him into one final phantom for Link to fight. And suddenly, Phantom Hourglass is ending on a gut punch, as you have to battle one of your main companions to free him from Bellum's grasp. It's really sad. Ciela tries to help you, but she's immediately caught by Bellembeck, but she helps throughout the fight by changing the top screen to her point of view, allowing the player to see when Bellum's weak spot eye opens up. You have to fight Bellembeck until you're able to stun him, allowing Ciela to escape for a brief moment and pass you a Phantom Orb. Then you have to wait until Bellum's eye opens and stop time with her ability to attack the boss. Bellembeck is strong. You have to be genuinely careful with how you attack him, and I found myself taking a lot of damage here to the point of needing to use a healing potion. All the while, the best boss theme is playing as this remixed version of Linebeck's theme, and it's just mwah, chef's kiss. Finally taking down Bellum and saving your friend is worth the effort, but it wouldn't have been as impactful had Linebeck not been so well written. He's a brilliant character, a perfect foil for Ciela, and without him, Link doesn't survive Phantom Hourglass. Put some respect on my man's name, he deserves it. And that's my list. Which Phantom Hourglass boss is your favorite? Let me know down below. And be sure to parry that subscribe button so you can stay up to date on all my future videos. Next week, we're going to be tackling the dungeons of Phantom Hourglass. And not going to lie, I forgot how short they were. I want to give a shout out to my YouTube channel members for supporting me for another month. You guys are amazing. It's $4.99. It gets you early access to future videos, and it gets you a shout out at the end of videos as well. Plus, special access to a Dark Souls 3 Soul Level 1 run playthrough, which has been so much fun to record. So, if you want to follow me on social media, my Blue Sky link is on screen now. It is in the description, and I'll see you guys next time for another video. Adios!